Welcome back to my channel. This week I have another what's for dinner video for you. Of course, because it is Sunday, I do these videos every single week. So if you are new here, make sure you go ahead and hit that little subscribe button if you don't want to miss out on any more what's for dinner videos. We are all about budget friendly, family friendly on this channel. So if that is something you're interested in, definitely hit that little button. But this week I have 4 super easy and delicious meals to share with you that are all very budget friendly. We actually did a no spend grocery week. So everything that was in these recipes I already had on hand. No runs to the grocery store. We bought absolutely no groceries last week. It saved us quite a bit of money just like using up what we had on hand. So if that is something that you're interested in, definitely make sure you stick around until the very end. But without further ado, let's go ahead and get into this week's meals. So to start off the week, I'm just going to be making some slow cooker barbecue pulled pork. It's a super easy recipe, great for a busy weeknight, but also super delicious. I'm just starting off by slicing up 1 whole yellow onion. I'm just slicing this up and making sure all of the pieces are broken up so that it does cook really well. And I'm just getting all of that ready to go. So this is what your onion should look like when you are all done with that. And then I'm also going to be seasoning up my pork loin roast here. So this is like a 3 or 4 pound pork loin roast, and I'm just seasoning it up with some salt and pepper as well as some garlic pepper. I'm just doing that to both sides, and that's going to be it for the seasonings for this recipe. So now I'm just getting my slow cooker ready to go. I'm just taking some oil and making sure that's really well oiled so nothing sticks to the bottom. I usually use a spray for this, but I was all out, so I'm just using some canola oil. And then here I'm dumping in that onion that I had sliced up earlier, as well as that pork loin roast. And then I'm dumping in about 3/4 of a can of Dr. Pepper. I know it sounds crazy, but trust me on this, it's super, super delicious. And then I like to do just a little bit of barbecue sauce. I add more later on, but I would say I add maybe like 1/3 cup of barbecue sauce at this time. So after I have both sides of the pork covered in just a little bit of barbecue, I'm just going to be slow cooking this for about 8 hours, or you can do it on high for like maybe 5 or 6 hours. You just want to obviously cook it through until the pork is nice and tender. It should look like this when it comes out, super delicious, and you're just going to pull it right out of your slow cooker and shred it up. You could use a hand mixer for this if you want to make it even easier, but I kind of like my pulled pork in bigger chunks. I don't like it super, super shredded, so I definitely prefer using 2 forks for the pulled pork, whereas chicken I usually will use the mixer. So here is my pulled pork all ready to go and get thrown right back into my slow cooker. But before I do that, I am going to pull out some of this juice. Since we put in that Dr. Pepper earlier, there's a ton of juice in here. So I would say I pull out about half of it and leave the other half in there. I do like to leave some because you do want some of that moisture when you add your pork back in there. So here I'm adding in my pulled pork, and then I do like to add in some barbecue sauce. I always use Sweet Baby Ray's. You guys know I like my generic brands, but barbecue sauce is one of those things that I do almost always get the Sweet Baby Ray's because I think it's just so good. I add in probably about 3/4 to a cup, probably half a cup or 3/4 of a cup of barbecue sauce in here, mix it all together, and then I let it cook together for maybe like another 30 minutes or so just to soak in all of those flavors. For a side dish on this night, I really wanted some good old mashed potatoes that were especially a little cheesy and creamy. So I have some baby red potatoes here that I did peel. I have them boiled up. I just did them in my Instant Pot. And then I'm adding in a little bit of sour cream, a couple tablespoons of butter, and then I'm seasoning them up really well with salt, pepper, garlic powder. And then I'm also adding in a good handful of this cheddar cheese and some milk until I get the consistency and the flavor that I like. So here is our dinner all plated up. I have the cheesy potatoes with some green beans and then my pulled pork sandwich. I just served it on a bun that I had made homemade earlier in the day. This was super, super delicious meal. You guys are going to love this one. The next meal this week is going to be some German pancakes. I have shared this recipe on my channel before, but my husband requested breakfast for dinner and he really wanted German pancakes. This is one of his all-time favorites and I totally don't mind it because it's super, super easy to throw together for me. So I'm just starting off with melting like 4 or 5 tablespoons of butter and I just throw those right into my oven while I'm getting all of the rest of the ingredients ready. So for this recipe, you're actually going to be using a blender. So I have my Ninja blender here and I'm just cracking 6 eggs into that. And then I'm also adding in 1 cup of just regular all-purpose flour as well as 1 cup of milk. I believe this was 2% milk. And then I'm also adding in a good teaspoon of vanilla with a little pinch of salt in there. And then you're just gonna blend all of this together. It's seriously so easy, hardly any ingredients, but I promise you it tastes super, super delicious. If you've never tried German pancakes, you've gotta try this one out. I promise you, you will not regret it. I'm just making sure that everything is really well blended together and then I'm adding it into that 9x13 pan that had the melted butter in it. You're just gonna pull that right out of the oven, add in your German pancake mix, and then you're gonna bake this at 425 degrees for like 22 to 27 minutes and then it should be good to go. I decided to keep our dinner really, really simple. This was actually a really late night meal for just Kenny and I, so I just decided to pair it with some venison bacon. I've made this in the past on my channel and you guys always ask what it is. It's basically ground venison with some ground sausage in there. It's almost more similar to a sausage than an actual bacon, but it's shaped like bacon and it's smoked. So it's really, really delicious. Kenny made this and it turns out so good and it's the perfect side for any breakfast meal. So this is what the German pancakes should look like when they come out of the oven. They should be really puffed up and golden brown on the edges, kind of nice and crispy, super, super delicious. And we always like to top ours with a little bit of powdered sugar on top. It seriously makes these even more amazing. You guys, I can't get over how much you are going to love this recipe. If you've never tried it before, definitely give this one a try. I always like to serve ours with a little bit of syrup on top, and a lot of times I will do fresh fruit as well, but I did not have any. But this is what everything looks like all plated up. Next up, I'm making this super delicious sausage, pepper, and rice skillet. I have shared it on my channel before, but it's super good. I wanted to share it again. So I'm just making some rice in my Instant Pot. I have 1 1/4 cups of brown rice with about 1 1/2 cups of water. And then I'm also adding in about 1/2 teaspoon of salt with a little drizzle of olive oil in there. And then I'm just pressure cooking this on high for about 15 minutes. And then when it's all done, I will let it release naturally for about 10 minutes before I fluff it up with a fork. While my rice is cooking up, I'm just getting all of the veggies and the sausage ready to go. So for this recipe, I am using 1/2 of an orange pepper as well as 1/2 of a red pepper. Use whatever type of peppers that you want, but our family really likes to use red and then either orange or yellow. And then moving on to the sausage for this recipe, go ahead and use whatever your family prefers. I would say you're gonna want about 1 pound of sausage. That's what I think this is. We are using venison sausage today, so this is just what we have in our freezer. Tons of this to use up because my husband really likes hunting and we always end up with a lot of venison. So we had some Polish sausage made and that is what this is that I'm cutting up. And then the last thing that you're going to want for this recipe is just take 1 whole yellow onion, or you could use a white onion if you prefer, and then just get this chopped up into pretty small pieces as well. Now we are heading over to my Dutch oven pot here. I do really like to use a heavy bottom pot for this. I'm just adding in a little bit of olive oil and getting that heated up, and then I'm adding in my sausage with all of my veggies, and I'm just cooking this until everything is almost all the way cooked through before we add in the rest of our ingredients. When you have just about a minute or so left to cook everything together, you're going to want to add in a couple big scoops of minced garlic, or about 4 cloves of garlic, and then I'm also adding in half a teaspoon of sea salt as well as half a teaspoon of black ground pepper. Once your veggies and your meat are completely cooked through, you're going to be adding in about 5 tablespoons of tomato paste. I am just eyeballing this, as you can tell here. And then you're going to have about 1 1/4 cups of chicken broth for this recipe. I add in about half of this right now, and then we'll save the other half for a little bit later on. You're just going to get all of this mixed together and kind of let it come up to a simmer. Now we are all ready to season this up. For seasonings, I'm just using 1 teaspoon of paprika as well as a 1/4 teaspoon of chili powder. The recipe actually calls for cayenne pepper, but I really prefer the chili powder just because I don't want this to be too spicy for my kids, and this chili powder in there is absolutely perfect. I will say I was a little hesitant on trying this recipe the first time I made it because I didn't know if my kids would like it, and I have to say they absolutely loved it. So if you have young kids, definitely give this one a try. It was a really big hit in my house. Then you're just going to add in all of that rice as well as the leftover chicken broth from earlier. Get all of that mixed together, and that's pretty much it for this recipe. It's super easy for a busy weeknight. So this was our dinner for tonight. Super delicious. I just paired it with some green beans, and this was so good and absolutely did not lack any flavor at all. This next recipe is a super easy and delicious cheeseburger hot dish. This was my first time making it. I was a little hesitant. I didn't know if we would like it, but we ended up really loving this recipe. Definitely give this one a try if you like cheeseburgers. So I'm just starting off with cutting up some onion. The recipe only called for about 1/3 of a cup, but I did end up using the whole onion. We really like onion, so that is what we ended up doing for our hot dish. And then I also decided to make it with some peppers. I had some peppers that I needed to get used up in the fridge, so I used some orange as well as some red peppers. I would say I used probably about half of a pepper total, maybe a little bit more, and I'm just getting all of that chopped up too. And now I'm just adding those onions and peppers into my skillet with about 1 pound of lean ground beef. Mine was probably about half of the way cooked through when I added in my onions and my peppers, but if your lean ground beef is fully unthawed before you start cooking it, go ahead and add everything in at the same time and it should turn out just fine. And then here I'm seasoning it up with some onion powder, some garlic powder, as well as some steak seasoning. I did add less steak seasoning than the recipe called for. I just felt like it would have been too salty. So now for the sauce for this, you're gonna add in a couple tablespoons of mayo, a couple tablespoons of ketchup, as well as a couple tablespoons of mustard. This is where I was like a little unsure if this was gonna taste good or not, but it actually was very good. Definitely nothing overpowering or anything like that. So give this one a shot. And then you're also going to need 1 tablespoon of Worcestershire sauce and 1 can of petite diced tomatoes. And then you're just gonna get all of this mixed together really well and kind of let it come up to a simmer and start heating through. While your sauce is warming up, go ahead and get your noodles going. I decided to use rotini noodles, but go ahead and use whatever you have on hand. I did make sure to salt the water for some extra flavor and then get those all drained off once they are completely cooked through. And then once everything is fully heated through, your noodles are done cooking, just get all of that mixed together. The only thing you're gonna have to do after this step here of mixing it together is you're gonna want to add in your favorite cheese. I did decide to use cheddar cheese for a classic hamburger. I would say I added about half a cup and mixed that in, and then I did go ahead and add maybe another half a cup on top of the pasta and kind of let that melt together until everything was melted through, everything was nice and warm. So this is what the hot dish should look like when it is completely done cooking. The cheese is all nice and melted. We just paired it with some pickles on top, which I know sounds crazy, but I promise you the dill pickles on there is so delicious. And this is how it all looks when it's all plated up and ready to eat. This next recipe are going to be these super chewy brownies. They were super delicious. This was my husband's request for me to make this recipe, so I decided to include it here. I added 4 eggs into my stand mixer along with 2 cups of just regular granulated sugar, and then I'm getting that mixed together just until everything is nice and combined. And then you're also going to need 2 teaspoons of vanilla extract. Mine was the imitation kind, but use whatever you have on hand. You're also going to need 1 teaspoon of regular table salt, as well as 2/3 a cup of vegetable oil or canola oil. And then for the flour, you're going to need about 1.5 cups of regular all-purpose flour. For the cocoa powder in this recipe, I'm just using half a cup of regular unsweetened cocoa powder. And then you're just going to get all of this mixed together in your stand mixer. You could definitely mix this by hand if you want to, but you guys know I love my KitchenAid, so that is what I'm using. And this is what it should look like when it is all done mixing together. Now I'm just oiling up my pan. I did not use a 9x13 pan, but that's actually what I would recommend using unless you want a really thick brownie. These ended up being pretty thick and they were super delicious, but I think next time I will use a 9x13 pan. I just oiled it up and then I'm adding in this brownie batter. I will say this is probably the thickest brownie batter that I have ever seen, and I was a little unsure how these were going to turn out, but these were honestly so good and I will definitely be making them again. If you are using a 9x13 pan, you're just going to throw them in a 350-degree oven for about 20 to 30 minutes. Mine did take a little bit longer just because my pan was a little bit smaller, but just go ahead and watch them, take them out when they're done, and these were super delicious and the chewiest brownies I have ever tasted. Alright guys, that is going to wrap up this What's for Dinner video. I really hope that you enjoyed it and that it gave you some meal ideas and inspiration for your week. If you did, don't forget to give it a thumbs up. Hit that little subscribe button. I would love to have you. We do tons of cooking content on my channel. We do meal prep videos, a What's for Dinner every Sunday, grocery hauls, tons of different food related content. So definitely hit that button if you are interested in that type of thing. And if you have any favorite meals, I would love to try out some new recipes. Leave your favorites for me in the comments down below and I may feature it in a future What's for Dinner video. But that is going to be it for today's video. I will see you guys next time. Thanks so much for watching. Bye.
As a young girl, the fields were mine. We played hide and seek for hours, raised our shadows among the pines. So offshore, playful and free, without a care